whatever you do, strive to do it so well that no man living and no man dead and no man yet to be born can do it any better. I know that when I am on my deathbed someday, I will not be thinking about any particular legislation I pass. I will not be thinking about a policy I promoted. I will not be thinking about the speech I gave. I will not be thinking about the Nobel Prize I received. I will be thinking about
What helps me a lot is taking the long view on things. I think so much pessimism and so much stress arises out of looking at things in this very narrow here and now. But the day-to-day sort of ups and downs and swings, it's like the weather. I mean, okay, get an umbrella sometimes you take off your jacket. But if you can keep your eye on the long view, not only does that relieve stress, but it also allows you to make better decisions. The things that last, the things that are important, usually have to do with how did you behave, how did you treat other people, did you work as hard as you could have, did you do your best? The things that you have control over. When I'm on my deathbed, the things I will remember will be, walking a 4-year-old Malia to the park. I'm not going to remember some headline. I think that's helpful. But that's just me. It's mostly the Hawaii thing. It's interesting, and this is consistent with the scientific method, right? Over the years, you accumulate knowledge. And you test hypotheses and propositions, right? So how I think about it today is different than the first day I walked into the Oval Office. Now I've got enough of a baseline of knowledge. I've seen problems come up before. I've seen patterns that have emerged that I may not have to go as into the briefing book as deeply as I did initially. So I'm skimming and I'm looking at are there significant differences? But the most important thing that I find, whether it's on the defense military side, whether it's on social issues, domestic policy, is I've learned to be pretty good at listening carefully to people who know a lot more than I do about a topic and making sure that any dissenting voices are in the room at the same time. So that there's an initial presentation. I will make sure that I hear from everybody in the room. Does anybody disagree with the baseline facts? Is there any evidence that's inconsistent with what was just said? And if there is, then I want to hear that argument in front of me. And what I'm pretty good at is then asking questions, poking, prodding, testing propositions, seeing if they hold up, and that I think is pretty consistent with how scientists approach problems generally. Most important advice I give to young people: just learn how to get stuff done. And what I mean by that is, I've seen at every level people who are very good at describing problems, people who are very sophisticated in explaining why something went wrong or why something can't get fixed. But what I'm always looking for is, no matter how small the problem or how big it is, somebody who says, let me take care of that. If you project an attitude of whatever it is that's needed, I can handle it and I can do it, whoever's running that organization will notice, I promise. And which is why I think with young people, you don't always need to be so impatient asking for the plum assignment. A lot of times the best way to get attention is whatever is assigned to you, you are just nailing. You're killing it, because people will notice, oh, that's somebody who can get something done. And the second piece of advice that I give is worry more about what you want to do rather than what you want to be. I think so often people have in their mind, I want to be congressman by 30, I want to make X amount of money by this age. And the people I find that are most successful are the people who say, man, I'm really interested in computers and figuring this stuff out. And then they end up being a Bill Gates. Or I'm really interested in, how to, cure this disease. And maybe they don't end up winning the Nobel Prize, but you know what? They have an extraordinary career because they're just interested in the thing itself. If you are absorbed by what you're doing, one of two things is going to happen. You're going to get really good at it, and whether you're rewarded, recognized, you get the positions that you want or not, the journey will have been a good one.
We need your daring, we need your enthusiasm, we need your energy, we need your imagination. And let me be clear, when I say young, I'm not just referring to the date of your birth certificate. I'm talking about an approach to life, a quality of mind and a quality of heart, a willingness to follow your passions, regardless of whether they lead to fortune and fame, a willingness to question conventional wisdom and rethink old dogmas, a lack of regard for all the traditional markers of status and prestige, and a commitment instead to doing what's meaningful to you, what helps others, what makes a difference in this world. That's the spirit that led a band of patriots, not much older than most of you, to take on an empire, to start this experiment in democracy we call America. It's what drove young pioneers west to Arizona and beyond. It's what drove young women to reach for the ballot, what inspired a 30-year-old escaped slave to run an underground railroad to freedom, what inspired a young man named Cesar to go out and help farm workers, what inspired a 26-year-old preacher to lead a bus boycott for justice. It's what led firefighters and police officers in the prime of their lives up the stairs of those burning towers, and young people across this country to drop what they were doing and come to the aid of a flooded New Orleans. It's what led two guys in a garage named Hewlett and Packard to form a company that would change the way we live and work. What led scientists in laboratories and novelists in coffee shops to labor in obscurity until they finally succeeded in changing the way we see the world. That's the great American story. Young people just like you, following their passions, determined to meet the times on their own terms. They weren't doing it for the money. Their titles weren't fancy. Ex-slave, minister, student, citizen. A whole bunch of them didn't get honorary degrees. But they changed the course of history, and so can you. Through education, you can also better yourselves in other ways. You learn how to learn, how to think critically and find solutions to unexpected challenges. I remember we used to ask our teachers, why am I going to need algebra? Well, you may not have to solve for X to get a good job or to be a good parent, but you will need to think through tough problems. You'll need to think on your feet. You'll need to know how to gather facts and evaluate information. So, math teachers, you can tell your students that the president says they need algebra. Education also teaches you the value of discipline. That the greatest rewards come not from instant gratification, but from sustained effort and from hard work. This is a lesson that's especially true today in a culture that prizes flash over substance, that tells us that the goal in life is to be entertained, that says you can be famous just for being famous. I mean, you get on a reality show, don't know what you've done, suddenly you're famous. But that's not going to lead to lasting, sustained achievement. And finally, with the right education, both at home and at school, you can learn how to be a better human being. For when you read a great story or you learn about an important moment in history, it helps you imagine what it would be like to walk in somebody else's shoes, to know their struggles. The success of our economy will depend on your skills, but the success of our community will depend on your ability to follow the golden rule, to treat others as you would like to be treated. You may have setbacks and you may have failures, but you're not done. You're not even getting started, not by a long shot. And if you ever forget that, just look to history. Thomas Paine was a failed corset maker, a failed teacher, and a failed tax collector before he made his mark on history with a little book called Common Sense that helped ignite a revolution. Julia Child didn't publish her first cookbook until she was almost 50. Colonel Sanders didn't open up his first Kentucky Fried Chicken until he was in his 60s. Winston Churchill was dismissed as little more than a has-been who enjoyed scotch a little bit too much before he took over as prime minister and saw Great Britain through its finest hour. No one thought a former football player stocking shelves at the local supermarket would return to the game he loved, become a Super Bowl MVP, and then come here to Arizona and lead your Cardinals to their first Super Bowl. Your body of work is never done. Each of them, at one point in their life, didn't have any title or much status to speak of, but they had passion, a commitment to following that passion wherever it would lead, and to working hard every step along the way. And that's not just how you'll ensure that your own life is well lived. It's how you'll make a difference in the life of our nation. Be the best husband to your wife, or your boyfriend, or your partner. Be the best father you can be to your children, because nothing's more important. I was raised by a heroic single mom, wonderful grandparents, made incredible sacrifices for me. And I know there are moms and grandparents here today who did the same thing for all of you. But I sure wish I had had a father who was not only present, but involved. Didn't know my dad. And so my whole life, I've tried to be for Michelle and my girls what my father was not for my mother and me. I want to break that cycle where a father's not at home, where a father's not helping to raise that son or daughter. I want to be a better father, a better husband, a better man. It's hard work that demands your constant attention and frequent sacrifice. And I promise you, Michelle will tell you I'm not perfect. She's got a long list of my imperfections. Even now, I'm still practicing, I'm still learning, still getting corrected in terms of how to be a fine husband and a good father. But I will tell you this, everything else is unfulfilled if we fail at family, if we fail at that responsibility. I know that when I am on my deathbed someday, I will not be thinking about any particular legislation I pass. I will not be thinking about a policy I promoted. I will not be thinking about the speech I gave. I will not be thinking about the Nobel Prize I received. I will be thinking about that walk I took with my daughters. I'll be thinking about a lazy afternoon with my wife. I'll be thinking about sitting around the dinner table and seeing them happy and healthy and knowing that they were loved. And I'll be thinking about whether I did right by all of them. So be a good role model. Set a good example.